It is powerful. It is great. This summit reflects a renewed vision for the continent of Africa. This summit is people-centered. It's diaspora-driven. It's Pan-African in its purpose. It is about building the economy that our generations to come will benefit from. It is about making sure that our youth do not have to cross any seas, but they can stay right here. And it's also about encouraging our brothers and our sisters in the diaspora to bring back your skills, bring back your wisdom, bring back your passion, and let us build this nation not only for ourselves, but for the world, because we are the ones the world has been waiting for. It gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to now yield this microphone for an individual who lives and breathes the passion of our continent of Africa. With a resounding Diaspora Summit 2025 applause, please bring to the stadium the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Please welcome Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa.
Thank you very much, Anita. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Your Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, African Union champion for reparations, and recently unanimously endorsed sole candidate for West Africa for 2027 Africa Union chairperson. And I think I should add the newly installed Ari Atayeto Odua of the Source, as conferred by the Oni of Ife in Nigeria only a few days ago. Your Excellency, for Esuzima Nyasingbe, the President of the Council of Ministers of the Togolese Republic, the Right Honorable Edward Doe Ajaho, Chairman of the Council of State, the Honorable Julius Deborah, Chief of Staff to the President, senior government officials and presidential aides, National Chairman and General Secretary of the ruling NDC, Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chambas, representative of the Chair of the Africa Union Commission, Your Excellency Ekos Pio Gabra, President's Special Envoy on Reparations, Your Excellency Kwesi Che Dakwa, President's Special Envoy to the Caribbean, Your Excellency Sheikh Nian, Minister of Africa Integration and Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Senegal, the Honorable James Jachi Kwesin, MP, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, His Royal Majesty Nocheni Note Uwu, the Fourth Osumanche, His Royal Majesty Ni Takiteku Churu, the Second Gamanche, Nana Dr. SKB Asante, representative of the Otumfuo, honorable members of Parliament, the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps and heads, representatives of international organizations, Chief Director officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kofi Ochredakon, Presidential Advisor on Diaspora Affairs, distinguished traditional leaders from all over Ghana, Mr. Stephen Isaac, Chairperson of the Genocide, Apology and Reparations Technical Committee of Namibia, Mr. Ben Crump, renowned civil rights and personal injury lawyer based in the United States of America, Mr. Ali Nichol Salimbi Jill, Chairman of the Grenada National Reparations Committee, esteemed scholars, global reparatory experts, panelists, resource persons, friends from the media, distinguished brothers and sisters from the African continent, the Caribbean, the Americas, and the global African diaspora. Good morning to you all. Or better yet, let me say welcome. Welcome home. Welcome to the land of freedom and justice. Welcome to the headquarters of Pan-Africanism. And welcome to the nation where every black life truly matters. It is an honor for me to welcome you all to the Diaspora Summit 2025, which is being held under the distinguished leadership of the President of the Republic of Ghana and African Union's champion for reparations, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. While the overarching theme of this summit is, quote, resetting Ghana, the diaspora as the 17th region, unquote, today's symposium will focus on a profound and urgent call, the call for reparations, and it will progress under the theme, reclaiming the African future, the quest for reparative justice and healing. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today's event is more than a gathering. It is more than a homecoming. It is a reunion, a reconnection of destinies. Our presence here today, each and every one of us, is the answer to a desperate prayer of an ancestor. A prayer spoken in the compounds and villages where those who had been stolen once lived and were loved, or in the dungeons of one of the several fortresses where enslaved people were held. A prayer spoken on the ships that were set sail across the Middle Passage with human beings as cargo. Human beings who were once mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers. Human beings who were once free. A prayer spoken on the sugar estates and ingenious in the Caribbean, in the mines and fazendas of South America, or on the cotton and tobacco fields and plantations of North America. We here today are the answers to those prayers. We are bound by a shared history and the spirit of resilience. We are committed to reshaping a better future for Africa and for all people of African descent. We have come together to deepen the global conversation that is currently being held on confronting historical and contemporary injustices through reparative justice. But more than that, we have come together to find solutions. Over the course of the past 4 centuries, there have been numerous attempts to separate us. They have all ultimately failed because here we are. This is the reason Ghana considers the diaspora our 17th region. This is also why we have been pursuing a foreign policy of unwavering and unadulterated solidarity. We are always proud to lend a helping hand through humanitarian efforts to bring relief and succor to our friends in need. Ghana ranks 7th in the world and 2nd in Africa in the number of troops it lends the United Nations for its peacekeeping missions. This year, under the guidance of President John Dramani Mahama, we were delighted to be able to expand our humanitarian efforts and extend support to Palestine, to Sudan, to Cuba, and to Jamaica. We make all efforts to ensure that our foreign policy is never defined by how much we can take from others, but rather it is guided by how much love and support we can share with others. This is also the reason that on the instruction of President Mahama, our brothers and sisters in the diaspora who registered online to participate in this Diaspora Summit were issued free visas by Ghanaian embassies all over the world. Excellencies, distinguished comrades, brothers and sisters, it has been exactly 80 years since the seminal 5th Pan-African Congress convened in Manchester by Ghana's founder, the Osagefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I see you want to hear that again. By Ghana's founder, the Osagefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Along with Jomo Kenyatta, Hastings Banda, Jacques Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, George Padmore, C.L.R. James, Obafemi Awolowo, Peter Abrahams, Ras McConnell, and others. It was at that Congress that the first defining sparks for the anti-colonial movement were ignited. Fortuitously, a significant number of these gentlemen then moved to Ghana to carry out the hard work and struggle needed to defeat colonialism. 80 years on, we should allow that example and the ensuing success that was experienced to inspire us on our noble journey of reparatory justice. Our time is now. Let history record that this summit marked the moment when we moved beyond rhetoric to coordinated action, and when we unreservedly demanded justice for the greatest sin against humanity. In so doing, we honor our ancestors by insisting that their plight be recognized, that their pain and suffering be remembered, and that their dignity be restored. We may be the answers to the prayers of our ancestors, but our children will be the beneficiaries of our refusal to be defined by the wounds of the past, and our strength to join forces as one global African family with a collective purpose. Together, let us reaffirm that Africa's rise is not only inevitable, it has already begun here in Accra. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. And in the spirit of celebration, may I also have a powerful round of applause for all the women who are sitting here today. Ghana is also home to where women are increasingly being prioritized. And I am so glad that my Honorable Minister of Tourism here has also just been mentioned and announced as the AU Chairperson for Youth, Sport and Culture. Honorable Jipa Gomashi, we celebrate you. Ladies and gentlemen, we quickly go into a collective of solidarity messages being individually delivered by outstanding citizens, outstanding individuals, not only on the continent, but also taking the name Africa around the world. Without any further ado, please bring to the stage with a powerful round of applause the chairperson of the Genocide Apology and Reparations Technical Committee of Namibia. Please warmly welcome Mr. Stephen Isaac.
In the southern parts of Africa, we would have said, Wosa Africa, Wosa, rice, meaning, not you, rice Africa. That is what we would have said. Greetings. Director of Proceedings, Your Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the host, and President of the Republic of Ghana, Your Excellencies, leaders present here, ambassadors, high commissioners, senior government officials, traditional leaders, community leaders, distinguished invited guests, fellow participants, members of the media. Good morning to you all. I'm pleased to recognize and thank His Excellency President Mahama of Ghana for hosting this important summit, which calls for reparations for Africa and the people of African descent. I would also like to thank all leaders present here and the people of the great nation of Ghana for their warm welcome and hospitality. I am today standing in for Her Excellency Dr. Netimbo Nanti Ndaitwah, President of the Republic of Namibia, who was looking forward to be present here today in person, but could not due to equally important commitments at home. Her Excellency the President extends her good wishes to His Excellency President Mahama, the people of Ghana, and all participants, and wish us successful deliberations during and beyond this summit. Allow me to begin by paying homage to this great country of Ghana, which has over the years been involved in the continental initiative for reparations for Africa and the people of African descent. The legacy of colonialism, apartheid, and systemic injustices that Africa went through centuries cannot easily be corrected. Neither can the impact of decades-long injustices be easily reversed. The continent continues to suffer from the lasting impact of colonialism, which exploited our economies, resources, altered our cultures, traditions, norms, and values. Namibia is in full support of this summit and its stated objectives and expected outcomes. We would like to add our voice to the clarion call for continental unity in engaging former colonizers for just reparations to Africa and to people of African descent the world over. I am pleased to share with you that in recognition of the significant role and contribution of the diaspora towards national development, that in early 2021, the government of the Republic of Namibia, through a cabinet decision, directed the initiation of the process towards the development of a national policy on the Namibian diaspora. And we had assistance in this regard from the Republic of Ghana, who graciously shared their policy with us for benchmarking purposes. A technical committee was subsequently established within the Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation to implement the cabinet decision. Thereafter, several consultative meetings took place with key Namibian stakeholders, including the Namibian diaspora. Opinions and ideas shared during these meetings significantly contributed to the development of the draft national policy that is in hand. In terms of our history and the context of where we are today, between 1904 and 1909, German colonial troops committed genocide in Namibia, the then called German Southwest Africa, which is today Namibia. It resulted in the indiscriminate killing of thousands of Herero and Nama people. Following the unanimous adoption of the National Assembly resolutions, two of them, in 26 October 2006, the government of the Republic of Namibia was mandated to seek dialogue and reparations from Germany for the genocide committed against those affected communities. Through negotiations, the government and Germany today initialed a joint declaration in May 2021, which reflected a lot of compromise. Germany acknowledged genocide, yes. They offered to render an apology, yes. And they committed to a quantum of over 1.1 billion euros for atonement, I beg your pardon. The tabling of the joint declaration in the National Assembly was followed by extensive debate in the House and in the public domain. Members of Parliament raised concerns over German resistance towards the actual reparations, aiming at a grant rather, and after successive engagement, Germany finally agreed to an addendum which was then incorporated in the joint declaration. Speaking to the gains that we have made,
through the over 10 years negotiations. I can confirm today that 2 distinct programs will be running once the joint declaration and the concomitant agreements are signed. One on reconciliation, the second one on reconstruction. The reconciliation program will speak to memory and remembrance and reconciliation, research and education including scholarships, culture and language, youth encounters and exchanges, intergenerational exchanges and dialogue, psychosocial support, trauma counseling, and the like. The reconstruction program will focus on infrastructural development and related developmental programs. As I conclude, Germany's acknowledgement of genocide and its commitment to an apology and atonement constitutes a historic milestone. However, Namibia continues to insist that reparations must carry both symbolic and material weight beyond development assistance. Allow me to reiterate that Africa's call for reparations will only receive true justice if we have a unified voice in multilateral fora, whether it is the call for reparations for slavery and resultant damages here in West Africa and other parts of the world, or the call for reparations for apartheid subjugation and exploitation in Southern Africa. Namibia stands ready to share our experiences and benchmark our negotiation process in the spirit of solidarity with you all. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Stephen Isak takes his seat, may we now warmly welcome the AU High Representative for Silencing the Guns. Please give a round of applause to Dr. Mohammed bin Chambers.
Your Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana. Your Excellency For Ezezima Gnassingbé, Président du Conseil du Togo. Honorable Ministers, our esteemed traditional leaders, our brothers and sisters from the diaspora, allow me to stand on the protocols established. I have the honor to address this distinguished gathering on behalf of His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and to convey his warm greetings and sincere appreciation to the government and people of the Republic of Ghana for convening this important Accra Diaspora Summit. Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to recognize at the outset the valuable custodianship of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic, as the African Union leader on advancing the cause of justice and payment of reparations to Africans. Your convening this conference comes at a moment of historic consequence for Africa and people of African descent worldwide. It takes place under the African Union's Theme of the Year for 2025, Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations, as designated by the Assembly Decision 884 and reinforced by subsequent Assembly decisions mandating coordinated, system-wide implementation across African Union architecture. Over the course of this year, the African Union has moved decisively from declaration to action. The year of justice and reparations has not been only symbolic. It has been operational, institutional, and increasingly global in its reach. Guided by Assembly Decisions 903, 913, and 934, the Union has laid firm foundations for a reparatory justice agenda that is anchored in law, policy, culture, and development, and that speaks with one African voice. Your Excellencies, distinguished audience, as we meet today, we are making history simultaneously in Accra and Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The African Union has made tangible progress in institutional development related to justice and reparations through the establishment of the Assembly-mandated Committee of Experts on Reparations and a reference group of legal experts. Yesterday, the committee concluded its inception meeting adopting forward-looking conclusions. Today, the legal experts start their critical shift towards operationalizing reparatory justice beyond advocacy into implementation. At the political and diplomatic levels, the year of justice and reparations has been characterized by sustained agenda setting and global advocacy. The African Union has actively shaped international discourse through high-level engagements, including Africa Day commemorations, United Nations platforms, and multilateral dialogues addressing racial justice, historical accountability, and the impact of emerging technologies on inequality. Africa's call for justice has been consistently articulated at forward-looking, constructive, and anchored in international law. Central to these achievements has been the African Union's strengthened partnership with the African diaspora. The AU CARICOM partnership was reinforced through a memorandum of understanding between the two secretariats last year. This year, the second Africa CARICOM Summit on September 7th, the first one to meet in person, adopted the Addis Ababa Declaration on Transcontinental Partnership for Reparatory Justice. This has elevated Africa diaspora collaboration to an unprecedented level. The 9th Pan-African Congress, successfully held in Lomé, December 8 to 12, further underscores the Union's commitment to institutionalize diaspora participation in shaping Africa's global agenda. And here we appreciate that President Faure hosted this meeting in Togo along with the people and government of Togo. The Algiers International Conference on the Crimes of Colonialism in Africa, held from November 30th to December 1, was yet another milestone in agenda setting and advocacy. As we progress in pursuing our agenda forward internationally, we have also exerted extraneous effort to reinforce our in-house coordination through the Citizen and Diaspora Directorate. We have established a dedicated mechanism to enable system-wide alignment across AU organs, regional economic communities, AU human rights bodies, and member states, ensuring that reparatory justice is no longer treated as a standalone theme, but as a cross-cutting continental priority. Equally important has been embarking on the process of the formal designation of reparations related to transatlantic enslavement, colonialism, and apartheid as a flagship issue of the African Union. This will allow reparatory justice to be mainstreamed into the African Union's strategic planning processes, including the final review of the AU Commission's Strategic Plan 2024-2028 and the upcoming 2027 budget cycle. In practical terms, this means that reparations are now embedded in Africa's long-term development and governance agenda, in line with the aspirations of Africa's Agenda 2063. It is against this backdrop of concrete progress that the Accra Diaspora Conference assumes particular significance. The conference's program mirrors, in many respects, the trajectory of the African Union's work during this year. The emphasis on historical truth, healing, and reparative justice resonates strongly with the AU's advocacy for recognition of transatlantic slavery, deportation, and colonization as crimes against humanity and acts of genocide against African peoples. At the same time, the conference rightfully advocates and advances the conversation towards economic justice and structural transformation. Sessions on leveraging the African diaspora to advance the African continental free trade, on diaspora investment instruments, and on sectoral opportunities across agriculture, energy, finance, education, tourism, culture, and the creative economy reflect the African Union's conviction that reparations must be transformative, not transactional. Justice, in this sense, must translate into ownership, opportunity, and shared prosperity. I recall here that we organized earlier this month in Djibouti a workshop on transcontinental comparative review for Africa diaspora and migrant communities, which aimed at the economic and socio-logical mapping reinforced by evidence and data, which are necessary for more effective engagement between the continent and its diaspora. The African Union also warmly welcomes the conference's focus on youth, innovation, and digital economy. The Commission continues to engage youth in consultations and youth-led dialogues on reparatory justice, one of which was held in Accra in July this year as part of the 13th High-Level Dialogue on Human Rights, Democracy, and Governance. These efforts affirm a central principle of the AU's approach that reparative justice must be intergenerational, equipping Africa's youth and diaspora youth with the tools, skills, and digital capacities to shape the future they inherit. Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the achievements of this year demonstrate that Africa is no longer merely asking for justice. Africa is organizing for justice. Through institutional reform, strategic partnerships, and coordinated advocacy, the African Union has laid the groundwork for a sustained and credible reparations agenda. we will continue to address the remaining tasks, particularly in institutional capacity, financing, and national-level implementation. Addressing these gaps will require sustained political leadership, deeper member state engagement, and continued partnership with the diaspora. In this regard, the Accra Diaspora Conference is not an isolated event. It is critical building block, a very critical building block at that, in a continental and global process. It offers an opportunity to align national initiatives, diaspora strategies, and AU frameworks into a coherent architecture for justice, unity, and development. On behalf of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, I commend the government and the people of Ghana for its leadership, vision, and unwavering commitment to Africa diaspora unity. I encourage all participants to approach this summit with ambition and purpose so that its outcomes contribute meaningfully to advancing reparative justice, strengthening Africa diaspora bonds, and realizing the aspirations of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. This is the message of Mahmoud, His Excellency Mahmoud, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. I wish you fruitful deliberations and a very successful summit. Thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, celebrated His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chambers reading a message on behalf of the AU chairperson. Please, another round of applause. Thank you. And now we continue with our solidarity messages with humility and respect. If I may kindly ask our following submissions to be up to 3 minutes, kindly, respectfully. Can we kindly have Mr. Arlie Nisho Salimbi Gill, who is the chairman of the Grenada National Reparations Committee, here to share for 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
His Excellencies, President of Ghana, or host, Excellency, President of Togo, Majesties and Royalties, senior government ministers, members of the diplomatic corps, dignitaries. Africa for Africans at home and abroad. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, thereby establishing the philosophy of Pan-Africanism and global Africa. Please allow me to congratulate and express my heartfelt gratitude to the government and people of Ghana for organizing and hosting this summit. By doing so, you are not only executed your mandate as lead country of the African Union for reparative justice, but you are also demonstrating tremendous strength in leadership in advancing the most important conversation that concerns our race in this century. Indeed, my presence here today, which was made possible by your invitation and generosity, is a living testimony of Ghana not only embracing global Africa, but it is an affirmation that the ideals of African unity is well and truly alive. It is from this sense of unity I bring you warm and fraternal greetings from CARICOM and the CARICOM Reparations Commission. Our heart leaps with joy for the fraternal support and leadership in the struggle for reparative justice and healing that is provided here in Ghana. A tree without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. It is with this knowledge that the Atlantic slave trade and chattel slavery perpetrated against our African ancestors as crimes against humanity It is this history that before the Europeans invaded, plundered, and exploited this African space, that this land and its peoples had an advanced civilization unmatched by the Europeans who were in awe of what they saw. That the interruption and destruction of our ancestral societies, the lasting harm of underdevelopment of our societies here on the continent, in the Americas, and in the Caribbean, that needs to be repaired. And the fact that the cost of this repair must be borne by those who did it. That is why reparative justice is a must. Now let us be clear. We continue to do all we can to improve the lives of our people and develop our societies. We are not sitting idly by waiting for anyone to help us and indulging ourselves in self-pity. We are a proud and dignified people. However, because we aspire to look after ourselves, that does not mean that the debt owed to us must not be paid. We demand that just as the Germans have paid and continue to pay their debt to the Jews, so too the Europeans must pay their debt to Africa and Africans. We in the CARICOM have developed a socio-economic plan which is now internationally recognized as the go-to document on reparative justice. It is called the CARICOM 10-point plan, which calls for a full and formal apology as the first act of reparative justice. For there to be healing, there must be an acknowledgement by the Europeans that the crimes that they have committed against us were actually crimes. That they must express sincere sorrow for so doing, give a commitment that it will not happen again, and ask us for forgiveness. After all, this is not different from the Christian teachings that they have taught us. Our plan demands repatriation of those of us in the diaspora who wish to return to the continent, with the Europeans underwriting that cost of transportation and relocation. An indigenous peoples program for the first settlers of the Caribbean, repair of public health and education systems, establishment of cultural institutions, restitution of cultural property, cultural reconnection, psychological healing, development through technology transfer, debt forgiveness, and monetary compensation. Mr. President, we note with great satisfaction, uncontrolled excitement, and great expectation your pledge to file a motion in the United Nations to have slavery declared as one of the greatest crimes against humanity. Let us see who will dare to say that this is not so. We note also your bold and courageous advocacy for restructuring the United Nations Security Council so that Africa can have a permanent seat. Speaking truth to power, that the current arrangement is outdated and unjust. Your call to reform the global financial system because it is rigged against Africa. And I dare to add, it is rigged against non-white countries and peoples. These old colonial structures, Mr. President, were not only designed to keep powers in the hands of a few countries. It is fundamentally anti-black and racist. And we must call it out for what it is. Colonialism ensured that while we secured our independence as states, that they will control global power through political structures and wealth. They still do not see us as equals. They refuse to admit the wrongs they committed against us, and they are determined not to compensate us either. Professor Hilary Beckles, the chair of the CARICOM Reparation Commission, has insisted that Europe has a case to answer regarding its historical role, with the only remaining questions are how, where, and when the case should be answered. Mr. President, you have added your voice. Africa's call for reparative justice is no longer a whisper. It is a unified demand. Therefore, we shall continue to march on demanding reparative justice on our feet and not on our knees. We will not crawl. We will not bow or otherwise cower in this struggle. And as your world-famous statesman, the founding father of your nation once said, we will say, forward ever, backward never. Long live the President and the people of Ghana. Long live the struggling people of Africa. Long live the struggle for reparative justice and healing. Long live the united force of Africa, the Caribbean and its diaspora. Long live, long live, long live.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jill. All right. And now we move on. May I kindly have your attention, please, 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 please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a lot of time for music and dance. Now let us get through the opening ceremony. But of course, allow me to say that in that energy, I also want to acknowledge the presence of the daughter of Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Miss Samia Nkrumah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But of course, sitting right next to her is also Honorable Gusi Tando, Presidential Advisor for 24-Hour Economy. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Et maintenant, mesdames et messieurs, je vous présente le ministre des Affaires étrangères et de l'intégration africaine de la République du Sénégal. Mesdames et messieurs, s'il vous plaît, Son Excellence Cheikh Niang.
Ekolukandongo bandeko Bomba makambo Bomba makambo Likambwe bomamboka.
Your Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, Excellence Faure Gnassingbé, Président du Conseil des ministres de la République togolaise, traditional leaders, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I wish first and foremost to express on behalf of His Excellency Bassirou Diomaye Faye, President of Senegal, and the government of Senegal, our deepest appreciation to the authorities of the Republic of Ghana for their gracious hospitality and for the exemplary manner in which this high-level summit is being organized. Let me also convey the sincere regrets of President Faye, who, owing to prior commitments, is unable to be present here in person at this important gathering. He nonetheless requested me that I assure his brother and friend, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, of the paramount importance he attaches to this initiative, as well as of his unwavering support for its objectives and anticipated outcomes. Senegal warmly welcomes the convening of this strategic summit devoted to the Ghanaian diaspora, recognized as the 17th region, and rightly positioned as a cornerstone of Ghana's national reset agenda. This enlightened and forward-looking approach gives full and due recognition to the diaspora's multifaceted contributions to the advancement and prosperity of the Ghanaian nation. In this spirit, President Faye wishes to reaffirm his full and resolute support to this initiative, which he regards as a major strategic instrument for the consolidation and deepening of ties between Africa and its diaspora. Senegal therefore commends the organization of this event, which reflects an ambitious, inclusive, and forward-looking vision, and which unequivocally recognizes the diaspora as a structuring and transformative force in Africa's development trajectory. We further congratulate the Republic of Ghana for the consistency, leadership, and moral clarity it has demonstrated, notably through the Accra Proclamation of 2023, endorsed by the African Union, which now stands as a seminal reference in the institutional recognition of the African diaspora at the continental level. And we are looking forward to the chairmanship of our organization by the President of Ghana in 2027. Indeed, this initiative constitutes a critical bridge toward the realization
of the objectives of the African Union, in full alignment with the continental theme of the year. I quote, "Justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations," end quote. Senegal reaffirms its full and steadfast commitment to working in close partnership with Ghana and all relevant stakeholders so as to ensure that the diaspora emerges as a durable and central pillar in the construction of a strong, united, and sovereign Africa, profoundly connected to its global diaspora. Ghana's pioneering experience with the 17th region resonates powerfully with Senegal Vision 2050, which advocates an inclusive, structured, and strategic mobilization of the diaspora. This commitment has been institutionalized through the official recognition of the National Diaspora Day in Senegal, which is now celebrated on the 17th of December. In conclusion, allow me to underscore that the diaspora constitutes a decisive driver of African integration. It facilitates economic, cultural, and human exchanges. It plays a pivotal role in the effectiveness of implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. It strengthens South-South cooperation. It enables the transfer of innovation, expertise, and knowledge that are indispensable to Africa's sustainable transformation. By placing the diaspora at the very heart of our national and continental strategies, we make a difference, and we make a deliberate and resolute choice in favor of unity, justice, and a shared African future. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we finish our short solidarity messages with the words and voice of a personal injury lawyer, but who is most known as a renowned and globally celebrated civil rights leader. Please warmly welcome Mr. Ben Crump.
Good morning, sisters and brothers. To Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, to honorable ministers of state, majesties and royalties, esteemed traditional leaders, representatives of the African Union and the United Nations, to my Ghanaian sisters and brothers, Her Excellency Dr. Erica Bennett, American businessman George and Tim, Maurice Cheatham, KOD, Natalie Jackson, Arian Simone, and Ajua Ashama, and to my brothers and sisters of the global African family. I greet you in humility. I greet you in solidarity. As a member of the African diaspora living in America, it is my profound honor to stand here in the motherland, to be here not as a guest, but as family, not as an observer, but as a descendant, carrying the history in my bones. Yesterday, Your Excellency, I spent the day revisiting Cape Coast with my wife and 25 American lawyers in my delegation. I walked the path our ancestors were forced to walk. I touched the waters they were made to bathe in. I stood in the dungeons where humanity was denied, but the African spirit was never broken. And then I stepped through the door of no return. But unlike our ancestors, I was granted the privilege they never knew. I walked back through the door of return. And above that door were the words that changed me. It said, "Welcome back home." That was not symbolism, that was truth. The African diaspora did not lose Africa. We were taken from Africa, but Africa never left us. As Dr. Kwame Nkrumah reminded the world with his powerful Pan-African vision, I am not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. Africa was born in our resistance. Africa was born in our survival. Africa was born in our insistence on dignity and justice and repair. I stand before you as the civil rights lawyer who championed justice for Trayvon Martin, the 17-year-old black American in 2012, who was walking home with his hoodie and a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea and was racially profiled and shot and killed by a neighborhood watch volunteer. And President Barack Obama said, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. I stand before you as the civil rights lawyer who represented Breonna Taylor, our sister in Louisville, Kentucky, who the police kicked in her front door at 1 o'clock in the morning, executing a no-knock warrant, and mutilated that young princess's body with 8 bullet holes while she was practically naked in her own home. And I stand before you as the civil rights lawyer who championed justice for George Floyd, who was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a police officer knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds while he said, I can't breathe 28 times. And the whole world said, until we get justice for George Floyd, none of us can breathe. But more importantly, I stand before you as a descendant of the survivors of the transatlantic slave trade. I represent families across the diaspora who still live with the consequences of enslavement, colonialism, racial violence. For us, reparative justice is not abstract. It is a lived reality. We are one people. No one can divide us but us. No one can unite us but us. Reparative justice, just as the enemies of equality believe and are unapologetic in their white supremacist beliefs, we as children of Africa must be unapologetic defenders of black life, black liberty, and black humanity. Reparations are not charity. They are not symbolic gestures. They are not moral. They are a moral and legal obligation owed for centuries for our stolen labor, our stolen land, our stolen resources, our stolen lives, and our stolen futures. I so humbly thank His Excellency, President John Dramani Mahama, for that historic speech in New York City at the United Nations. I applaud you. We stand for you for that historic proclamation on behalf of all of Africa. Because President Mahama Your leadership has let Ghana show the world what moral leadership looks like. And we need it now today more than ever. By opening the door of the return, by welcoming the diaspora home, by affirming that Africa's future is inseparable from the fate of her dispersed children, Ghana's leadership sends a message that echoes beyond the continent. That message is one that healing requires truth, justice requires courage, and reconciliation without repair is incomplete. Let this summit here in Accra, Ghana mark a turning point where Africa and her diaspora stand together, not divided by oceans, not imprisoned by history, but united in purpose, not asking for recognition, but demanding repair, not waiting for justice, but organizing to claim it ourselves. In conclusion, I stand with you, I walk with you, I commit my voice, my work to ensure that the descendants of the Africa and enslaved and the colonized are no longer to wait for justice that is already overdue. May our solidarity be unwavering, may our actions be collective, and may Africa and her diaspora rise together to shape the future we deserve. Just like we may win in legal arguments for Trayvon Martin to get justice, and we may win in legal arguments for Breonna Taylor to get justice, and we may win in arguments for George Floyd to get justice. We are prepared to make winning legal arguments for Africa and all of the diaspora to get reparative justice. Reparative justice, reparations now, reparations today, reparations for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the powerful words of Mr. Ben Crump, renowned civil rights advocate. Another round of applause for all our solidarity messages. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without a doubt, you are currently sitting in or on a continent where music has long been our soundtrack, where the soul, R&B, hip-hop, pop, high life, hip life, KKD, what else? Everything else in between. Ban Logo, all born right here from this beautiful soil. And so it is with great pride that I bring to the stage a brother who has taken this power and this joy of Africa around the world through a globally renowned play on the story, the life, and the legacy of Mansa Musa. Ladies and gentlemen, please, with a resounding Diaspora Summit applause, please bring onto the stage Chief Moment and Mansa Musa.
Yakun Jamala Kwari, Yakun Jamala. Yakun Jamala Kuri, Yakun Jamala, way, Jamala Kuri, Yakun Jamala, Tiide me Jamala Kuri, Yakun Jamala. Welcome to Ghana. Welcome to the Black Star of Africa. Welcome to the cradle of Pan-Africanism, where an Osajefo lit the flame of liberation and it caught fire across the continent and beyond. Welcome to the doorway through which millions of our people were marched out of the dungeons, through the door of no return, onto the hungry ship sailing the turbulent Atlantic into the hushed New World. But welcome to the point at which we build a bridge across the Atlantic, at which we stretch our hands to our brothers and sisters everywhere else in the world. Today we honor our shared ancestry. We strengthen the bonds of solidarity to deliver our common prosperity. And even as we clamor and advocate for justice, for reparations, may I hasten to remind all of us that here in Ghana, we are delivering the most important reparations of all, spiritual and cultural reparations. No matter who you are, when you land here, when you breathe the air of Osajefo's Ghana, when you imbibe the culture, the rhythm, the sight and sounds, when you do the pilgrimage, you feel a certain sense of rejuvenation in your soul. That is what our foreign minister honorable referred to in his speech, and our last minister asked, welcome home.
You've been gone, it's an empty home. Come on back when you're ready to know. Welcome home, welcome home. You've been kept on for much too long. Stand up, please, and say I am free. Don't forget you are welcome home, welcome home. Oh, come with me. Happy trip back to the promised land. Oh, we'll be happy, happy again. Oh, come with me on this happy trip back to the promised land. Happy again. Welcome home, welcome home, welcome.
The Africa we want is the global Africa,
where we harness and consolidate the talents, the energies, and markets of 2 billion Africans across the nation.
and across the diaspora to create an unstoppable force, to ignite an economic and social and cultural renaissance for the motherland and for its people in all lands. What connects Africa and its diaspora?
It is our shared history of joys and pains,
of triumphs and tribulations.
It is a large ocean where captured people march across the oceans in a land of no return, in hungry and angry ships,
across hurricanes and through tempests, all onto concentration complaints for sugarcane. Global Africa is now the land of return, for a bond that will never be broken. You may write me down with your bitter, twisted lies, but like dust, we rise.
Buffalo soldier, dreadlock rasta. It was a buffalo soldier in the heart of America. If you know your history, then you would know where you're coming from. Then you wouldn't have to ask me, who the heck you would think I am? And just the why yo yo, why yo yo yo, why yo 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 yo, why yo yo, why yo yo yo, why yo 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 yo, Buffalo soldier.
There are more centuries in our past than there are since the Middle Ages.
We have been a people way before we have been a fractured people.
The tides of the ocean do not drown the ties of our ancestry. As trite as it sounds, it's true. Blood is thicker than water. We must reach across the pond to find solidarity in the
you've got to keep moving and never stop chasing your
and lessons to behold.
A big thank you to the Deputy Chief of Staff, Honorable Nana Oyebampo, who is also here. Thank you so much. These are individuals who have collectively helped to push this agenda forward. My big sister Joyce Bawa Mutgari, Special Advisor to His Excellency, wherever you are, Sister Joyce, we thank you. Director of Operations at the Presidency, Kofi Wachi, we thank you. We have a long list, but allow me to please mention the only Ghanaian in Germany's parliament representing Hamburg, Honorable Irene Appiah. We celebrate you. Ladies and gentlemen, with that exceptional Mansa Musa performance, we go into hearing a special address on the transatlantic slave trade and the quest for reparative justice. Please warmly welcome here, presenting and reading the speech on behalf of the Director General of UNESCO, Mr. Khalid El Enani. Please welcome the UNESCO representative to Ghana, the Honorable Edmund Mukala.
Thank you. Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency President for Nyasingbe, President of the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Togo, Professor Nana Opoku Agyame, Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, who's following us for sure online, Representative of Head of State here present, Honorable Julius Drebra, Chief of Staff of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable Samuel Akoduka Ablaka, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Abla Jiva Gomashe, Minister of Tourism and Culture and Creative Arts, heads of international organization, traditional authority, chieftain and institution, highly represented here by the Gamanche, His Excellency Wakele Mene, Secretary of the General of AFSTAC, Mr. Kofi Okiere Darko, Director of Diaspora Office, Office of the President, Dr. Ekwo Ispio Garba, Chairman of the Ghana's Presidential Special Envoy on Reparation, Ambassador Thomas Kwesi Kwate, distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Due to prior commitment, the new Director General of UNESCO, Mr. Khaled El Enani, was unable to attend this important summit. He expressed his sincere apology to His Excellency President Mahama and this august assembly for not being able to join in person. He has asked me to read his statement, which is actually a presentation on the quest for reparation, support, and express his support to His Excellency John Mahama for, in his capacity as the AU champion for reparation and racial justice, and to the Diaspora Summit under the theme Resetting Ghana, the Diaspora as the 70th region. So I read, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is with immense and profound respect that I stand before you today, not just to make a presentation, but also as a follow travel on the great journey of history. We gathered at a pivotal moment, a time when understanding our past is not merely an academic exercise, but a vital necessity for charting a course towards a brighter future. Today, I will speak about one of the dark chapters of human history, the transatlantic slave trade and slavery, drawing deeply from the monumental findings within the UNESCO General History of Africa's publication. Today we gather not merely to revisit a sequence of dates, but to trace a moral journey, a journey from the ruins of war to the architecture of peace, from erased voices to restore narratives, from denial to recognition, from inherent suffering to intentional dignity. We meet at a crossroad where history is not behind us, but within us, where the past is not a museum artifact, but an active force shaping opportunity. shaping identity, shaping whose humanity is assumed and whose must still be defended. And so let us ask a question that is both simple and profound. What is peace? If it is built on forgetting, what is reconciliation if truth is postponed? What is progress if it is purchased at the price of silence? The story we tell today is inspiring because it proves essential that human beings and nations can choose to learn, that institutions can be used not only to govern but to heal, that education can be more than instruction, it can be liberation. Our journey begins with UNESCO, born from the ashes of the Second World War, created in the conviction that lasting peace is not only a matter of treaties and armies, but of minds and hearts. It continues through UNESCO's bold commitment to Africa's history, through the initiation of the General History of Africa, which was in the years of 1964, and we believe that was under the presidency of President Kwame Nkrumah, and we want really to acknowledge the General History of Africa that we're talking about. He was one of those championing founding fathers of Africa in the seat of UNESCO. It advances to the launching of UNESCO's slavery project in 1994, breaking open long suppressed truth and honoring the lives and cultures that survived the unthinkable. It reached global turning point in Durban, where the world declared the slave trade and slavery to be a crime against humanity. And now His Excellency is taking it one step further to his legitimate place, the biggest crime against humanity. It is against renewed momentum when in 2013, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 2015 and 2024 the International Decade of People of African Descent. This is not merely a chain of events, it is a chain of conscience. And each link matters because it pulls the world towards justice. Why then UNESCO was created? When UNESCO was created in 1945, the world stood stunned by what human beings had done to one another. Cities had been reduced to rubble, families had been separated and destroyed, entire communities had been targeted for extinction. And the great question was not only how to rebuild buildings, but how to rebuild the human spirit, how to prevent repetition of catastrophe. UNESCO founding ideas was revolutionary in its simplicity. Since wars begins in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Think about the courage of that idea. It says that peace is not a pause between wars. Peace is an education. Peace is a culture. Peace is a commitment to truth, to dialogue, and to the full dignity of every human being. And I take this opportunity to congratulate His Excellency President Mahama for his leadership in the peaceful settlement of the Baoku conflict using the traditional knowledge and wisdom of the chieftaincy system through His Majesty the Asante Hini. For your information, my office has recommended that the successful process of mediation be presented to the Luanda Culture Forum, a Peace Forum in 2026, which is attended by several heads of state. We believe that many conflicts in Africa could learn from this Africa ancient, rich experiences. UNESCO creation was a declaration that knowledge is not neutral. It can be weaponized for hatred. It can be mobilized for mutual understanding. Education can be used to rank human worth or to affirm that every human life is equal value. Culture can be used to exclude or to connect. Science can be used to dominate or to serve humanity. UNESCO therefore was created because the world recognized that ignorance is not harmless. Ignorance can become ideology. Ideology can become policy, and policy can become devastating. So UNESCO set up to build bridges between nations, between discipline, between memories. It aimed to protect heritage, to expand education, to encourage scientific cooperation, and to defend freedom of expression. In doing so, it also creates a space for long overdue reckoning that peace requires not only ending violence, but addressing the historical violence that still shapes the present. And there lies the heart of our history, our story. The understanding that to construct peace, we must also confront the narrative that have justified oppression. We must illuminate the history that were hidden. We must restore what was taken, not only in land or labor, but in truth and recognition. That's how the general history of Africa was initiated. Africa was spoken about rather than being listened to, described rather than being understood, measured by what was taken from it rather than what it gave to humanity. Too often, textbooks reduce Africa to a footnote, a place of extraction, a stage for outsiders, a continent introduced only at the moment of its violation. But Africa is not a footnote. Africa is a source. Africa is not a chapter that begins with colonization. Africa is a library of civilization, philosophy, technology, art, and spiritual tradition, as the Master World just demonstrated here a while ago. The Master World, this group, is now special envoy to UNESCO on the dissemination of the general history of Africa. Let's give them a big round of applause again. It was with this spirit that UNESCO, the 13th session of the General Conference, initiated the General History of Africa, an ambitious undertaking to compile, research, and present Africa history through rigorous scholarship and crucial with the active participation of African historians and intellectuals. Just like Chinua Achebe said, let the lion now speak their own story, instead of letting the hunter continue to glorify on what was not really the objective and the truth of history. So why it was so important? Because history erasure is not an academic accident. I repeat again, because historical erasure is not an academic accident. It is a political strategy. When people are told they have no history, they are easier to dispossess. When a continent is portrayed as lacking civilization, its exploitation becomes easier and justified. When the achievements of the people are minimized, their rights in the present are negotiated rather than recognized. The general history of Africa, therefore, represents a turning of the page, sometimes literally in classroom. It challenged the world to see Africa whole in its empire, city, states. It is a system of knowledge in its contribution to the mathematics, metallurgy, navigation, architecture, literature, medicine, pharmacy, and governance. It affirmed that Africa history is not separated from the world history. It is foundational to it. I'm trying my best, don't worry. I have 10 minutes, so I have to be faithful. I will try to read really the most essential part, but I have to convey the message since I'm reading it, but I'll do my best. So indeed, more than correct record, it restored dignity. It offered young people of African descent a mirror that reflects not only suffering, but achievement, not only survival, but creativity and leadership. It offered the world a chance to learn humility, to recognize that global civilization is not the product of one region, one race, or one tradition, but a shared human genius. When UNESCO supported this initiative, it was not merely publishing volumes. It was challenging an old global habit, the habit of telling a story with some voices amplified and others muted. It was insisting that peace requires intellectual justice, and that's why we're in this quest of justice. And follow that, UNESCO then launched the Slavehood Project, which aim was really to reach a program to act more courageously, to seek the history of the transatlantic slave trade, the contribution of Afro descent, and all the aftermath that they went to. Why this mattered deeply? Because slavery was not only a crime, labeled theft. It was a crime of identity, faith. It attempted to sever names from families, languages from tongues, religions from rituals, and memories from their rightful heirs. It sought to make human being into commodity and to make cruel appear normal. Yet the silence around slavery, its mechanism, its profits, its cultural destruction and legacy has also been a kind of violence. Silence can become denial. Denial can become distortion. Distortion can become a platform for new injustice. The slavery project that aimed to identify, document, teach the truth, the roots, the port, the market, the laws, the ships, the plantations, the resistance is sought to preserve sites of memory, and many of you will be visiting the forts and castles who even paid with their life on those buildings still are crying for justice, because for sure they were never acknowledged. And one thing that is a paradox, we name them, we give still the name of those who brought enslavement. This is maybe a thought also, we need some reparation in those areas. That was my additional. I'm getting maybe excited with his speech. I'm back to the Director General's speech and try to conclude. To save time, I think the speech is a little bit long. So the Director General highlighted on the slavery project. He then highlighted on the Durban Conference, which proclaimed slave trade and slavery as crime against humanity and the justification why it was so. And one of the things that I have to underline, what we lack was that leadership. And I believe, as my predecessor have highlighted, President Mahama, leadership and championing, and we heard that this will be running for years to come. We believe this is going to be tremendous, and I identify with all of my colleagues that, you know, this is an unfinished business, and until justice is done, we will not breathe. From the declaration of slave trade as crime against humanity, UNESCO then, within the UN General Assembly, helped with the International Decade for People of African Descent, because the UN finally recognized in 2013 that the poverty and the suffering and discrimination of population of African descent that have been experiencing globally is also rooted and linked to the history of slave trade and colonization. I'm really saving the time. So this is some of the points that the Director General highlighted, so that I could read to the conclusion. So our responsibility now, and peace we choose to build. So what does this journey ask for us here and now? It asks us to treat history as responsibility, to defend education as public good, to protect archives, museums, heritage sites, oral history, to resist the temptation of comfortable forgetting, to reject the false peace ignorance. It asks educators to teach with courage and completeness. It asks institutions to fund research, preserve memory. It asks government to ensure that anti-discrimination commitment become measurable outcome. It asks cultural leaders to tell stories that humanize, not stories that harm. It asks every listener to become a guardian of dignity in daily life, in workplaces, school, media, and policy. Because the arc from UNESCO creation from the general history of Africa to all the decade of population descent is all seeking to build an international decade of community where recognition must become justice and justice must become development. And now, recalling His Excellency President Mahama, as my predecessor just said it, the slave trade must be recognized as the greatest crime against humanity. As the African champion on reparation, Ghana intends to introduce a motion in this August body so that, to that effect. We must demand reparation for enslavement of our people and the colonization of our land that resulted in the theft of natural resources as well as looting of artifacts. This statement builds clearly on UNESCO works since 1964 through the General Conference of UNESCO. We are persuaded that the action that is being conducted today will address the issue of truth and education, integrating accurate history of slavery, colonialism, African contribution into curricula, teacher training, and public memory. Culture justice, accelerate the return and restitution of looting artifacts, and establishing fair partnership for conservation, exhibition, and scholarship that respect origin. And we are proud to mention that under the leadership of Honorable Minister of Culture and Tourism and Creative Art, we're working on this restitution cultural property looted from the country, and we will continue to do so. On economic development and repair, investing in transformative local-led priorities, health system, technology transfer, climate resilience, youth employment, addressing the enduring socio-economic consequences of historical extraction. Institutional accountability, ensuring that global system, financial, educational, and cultural do not continue patterns of exclusion, and undervaluation, or structural disadvantage for people of African descent. And commemoration and memorialization. And for that also, I want just to indicate that UNESCO, with the Ministry of Education and the sister ministries, we are working also now to introduce the publication of Kwame Nkrumah into the registry of the world, the memory of the world. As much as he has been popular, we did not register him to that memory of the world. And so that work is being done under the leadership of Excellency President John Mahama, and we believe the ministry, we are going to accelerate within the course of next year. So by the time we reach the 70th anniversary of Ghana, we will be able to speak boldly and proudly that Kwame Nkrumah's publication has now made it into the World Global Registry. And yeah, she's standing, so I better just skip. So as we look forward in the spirit of UNESCO and solidarity with Ghana's call, let us leave this hall ready to build the defenses of peace in the minds of all by teaching what happened, naming what it was, and repairing what it broke. May we build a world where the dignity of people of African descent is not defended only in declarations, but lived in institutions. May we build curricula that do not shrink history, but expand humanity. May we build society where differences is not punished, but honored. May we build a peace that is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. Let us live today committed to something enduring, to remember with honesty, to educate with integrity, and to act with courage, so that the future does not repeat the crimes of the past, but fulfill the promises of our shared human family. As I stated earlier, UNESCO's role is not to replace national leadership represented here, responsibility, but to create a platform where the world can speak honestly to itself, where the international community can name what happened and what must never happen again. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mr. Edmond Mukala, UNESCO representative to Ghana. And now, as we go to the crescendo of our program, I would like to yield the stage to Amanziba Nat Brew. Excellency for Esazimna Nyasime.
Merci. Excellence, Monsieur John Dramani Mahama, Président de la République du Ghana et chers frères, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Majestés, vénérés chefs traditionnels, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, chefs de mission diplomatiques, consulaires et représentants des organisations internationales, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants de la diaspora et des communautés afro-descendantes, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, je voudrais avant toute chose vous remercier, cher frère président John Mahama, de m'avoir convié à cet important sommet. Nous ne sommes pas ici pour parler du passé. Nous sommes ici pour réfléchir ensemble à l'avenir. Le mouvement des réparations n'est pas une revendication nostalgique. C'est une exigence de justice, une condition de stabilité et un levier de transformation pour les générations qui viennent. Car l'Afrique n'est pas un continent blessé qui demande assistance. L'Afrique est une force collective qui demande équité, reconnaissance et vérité. C'est le sens, je crois, de ce sommet. C'est le sens du leadership du président Mahama et c'est le sens de l'engagement du Togo. permettez-moi de partager avec vous 4 réflexions sur la manière de reprendre dans nos propres mains le destin de l'Afrique et de notre diaspora mondiale. D'abord, les réparations ne sont pas une demande tournée vers le passé. Elles sont une condition de l'avenir. Parler de réparation, ce n'est pas revisiter le passé. C'est identifier les forces encore invisibles qui continuent de façonner le système mondial au détriment de l'Afrique et de sa diaspora. Car la traite transatlantique et la colonisation n'ont pas seulement brisé des vies, elles ont configuré l'économie mondiale. Elles ont créé des inégalités de productivité, des asymétries commerciales, des fractures technologiques, des fragilités institutionnelles. Ces mécanismes ne sont pas derrière nous. Ils sont encore dans nos économies, dans nos échanges, dans notre place dans le monde. Les réparations sont aussi essentielles à notre développement que les infrastructures, la finance ou la transformation productive. La première étape, c'est la vérité. Il faut que le monde reconnaisse enfin formellement que la traite transatlantique fut un crime contre l'humanité. Oui, beaucoup d'instruments reconnaissent sa gravité, mais aucun n'a encore dit, avec la force du droit, qu'il s'agit du plus grand crime contre l'humanité. L'initiative du président Mahama n'est pas seulement une demande de justice, c'est un geste fondateur. C'est donner au monde un langage commun pour dire la vérité, pour réparer les blessures et reconstruire l'avenir sur des bases solides. Ensuite, les réparations doivent prendre une forme concrète. La vérité ne suffit pas. Les réparations exigent des instruments. L'annulation ou la restructuration des dettes héritées, des fonds multilatéraux pour l'éducation, la science et l'innovation, des engagements juridiques nouveaux à l'ONU. Et au-delà des instruments, elles exigent des institutions. Une véritable infrastructure de justice, capable de transformer la mémoire en droit et les droits en progrès. Rendre justice à l'Afrique, c'est contribuer à la stabilité du monde entier. Ainsi comprises, les réparations deviennent un acte de reconstruction mondiale. Elles ouvrent la voie à une relation internationale plus juste, où l'Afrique cesse d'être à la marge et retrouve sa place, une place de création, de stabilité et d'initiative. Ma deuxième réflexion, c'est que la diaspora est un levier stratégique essentiel pour la souveraineté africaine. Notre diaspora n'est pas un souvenir, une histoire. Elle n'est pas une périphérie de l'Afrique. Elle en est une véritable extension politique, économique et intellectuelle. L'avenir de l'Afrique se joue autant à Accra, à Lomé, à Kigali, mais il se joue aussi à New York, à Londres, à Kingston, Sao Paulo, parce que la diaspora porte certains réseaux d'influence les plus puissants au monde, dans la finance, la culture, les technologies, la diplomatie, les médias. Chaque année, elle produit davantage de richesses, de savoir et d'innovation que nombre de mécanismes de développement traditionnels. C'est pourquoi la question des réparations doit intégrer une dimension diasporique. Des fonds conjoints Afrique-Diaspora, des statuts juridiques adaptés, des investissements facilités, la valorisation des savoirs culturels et scientifiques issus de notre diaspora. Sans ces liens, l'Afrique se prive d'une force incomparable, la force de ses enfants qui certes vivent ailleurs, mais qui portent tellement l'Afrique dans leurs mains. Aucune stratégie de souveraineté, ni financière, ni culturelle, ni numérique, ne peut réussir sans la mobilisation de la diaspora. Ma troisième réflexion, c'est que le processus de guérison collective est un impératif politique. Les réparations ne peuvent pas être réduites à des chiffres ou à des transferts. La traite et la colonisation ont laissé des blessures profondes, visibles mais aussi invisibles. Des blessures qui traversent les générations. Nous avons besoin de travail de guérison collective. Guérir, c'est retrouver la confiance entre les peuples africains, entre l'Afrique et sa diaspora, entre l'Afrique et le monde. Guérir, c'est reprendre nos récits, c'est réécrire l'histoire africaine du point de vue africain, c'est valoriser des savoirs trop longtemps dévalorisés, c'est enseigner à nos enfants que l'histoire de l'Afrique n'est pas une parenthèse de silence, mais une histoire de continuité, de résistance et de renaissance. Ce travail de guérison n'est pas un supplément moral, c'est une stratégie de puissance, c'est une condition de stabilité et un levier de transformation, car sans justice, il n'y a pas de stabilité, et sans stabilité, il n'y a pas de développement. Ce travail exige que l'Union africaine, la CEDEAO, le CARICOM parlent d'une seule et même voix, car une Afrique réconciliée avec son histoire est une Afrique souveraine, souveraine scientifiquement, numériquement, culturellement et économiquement. Une Afrique réconciliée avec elle-même peut aller loin, très loin. Elle peut redevenir ce qu'elle n'a jamais cessé d'être, une grande civilisation en mouvement. Ma quatrième et dernière réflexion, c'est que nous devons engager une refondation profonde de notre position dans le monde. Les réparations doivent ouvrir la voie à un nouveau pacte économique, culturel et institutionnel entre l'Afrique et le reste du monde. Un pacte fondé sur la souveraineté économique, sur la mobilité du savoir, sur un investissement massif dans la jeunesse africaine et diasporique. Reprendre dans nos propres mains l'avenir de l'Afrique, c'est une vision, mais c'est également une responsabilité. Cela exige de repenser les fondements de l'ordre international, la gouvernance financière, les règles du commerce, la protection des données, la circulation du savoir, l'accès aux technologies stratégiques, la reconnaissance de nos patrimoines culturels. Cela exige notamment une réforme structurelle des Nations Unies avec une représentation permanente de l'Afrique au Conseil de sécurité, des mécanismes juridiques pour reconnaître les crimes coloniaux, un cadre international pour les réparations financières, symboliques et institutionnelles. C'est la dynamique portée, je crois, par le président Mahama. C'est une dynamique que le Togo soutient pleinement. En exigeant des réparations, l'Afrique ne demande ni charité ni compassion. Elle demande équité, reconnaissance, justice. Et elle avance avec confiance. Une Afrique qui décide, une Afrique qui innove, une Afrique qui crée de la valeur sur son sol. Une Afrique qui protège ses ressources, une Afrique qui rayonne, une Afrique portée par l'énergie inépuisable de sa jeunesse et par la force immense de sa diaspora. Ce sommet est un moment rare, un moment où nous pouvons bâtir une alliance durable entre l'Afrique et sa diaspora mondiale. Une alliance qui soit à la fois un espace de mémoire et un moteur d'avenir. C'est aussi un moment où nous pouvons jeter les bases d'un nouveau pacte de l'Afrique avec le reste du monde, parce que reconnaître la pleine dimension du crime qu'a été la traite transatlantique n'est pas un geste contre quelqu'un, c'est un geste pour l'humanité, c'est un geste pour la vérité, pour la dignité et enfin pour la paix. Ce sommet est donc une manière d'ouvrir un nouveau cycle, celui d'une Afrique qui décide par elle-même, qui transforme, qui protège, qui rayonne et qui, avec sa diaspora, reprend enfin en main son avenir. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Merci beaucoup, Son Excellence. Soyez le bienvenu au Ghana, au Bakin, Akwaba, Sandazua. Welcome to this crossroads of dreams where it all began. Welcome to this place where mother pushes out, had enough birth water and they chose to call the Atlantic. Thank you for coming to this place where enough birth water shot us out to corners of the world they never thought we could hold, and enough birth water bringing us back to the wombs of mother to be born again. We are a people whose birth cords were cut on nomadic whetstones. My elders I did not forget to greet. It is simply because when a child is called before his elders, he dare not name names or call titles lest he misses one and be made to pay a fine. And so I take the back of my slipper. Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, our elders, revered greybeards, backs without which we have no front, tongues without which we have no song, fires without which we would not have to cook our bath water and boil the herbs to heal our wounds, to even cook our food and share around this ring of mother that gather at the center. I salute you all. I remain a child learning the ropes of the world and the ways of my people. I have learned that truly the burdens of a great vision weigh the shoulders of the mind, but we have been born in good times, for we are the unfettered voices our ancestors wished to have, and be that cocktail they wished would go down their throats into memory and lend the strength of hope. Yet we are those people they called nomads with no place to dwell. But mind you, the world could not count our steps, and so they chose to call it dance. Welcome to this place where dance was born. Welcome to this place where we do not beat our palms anymore, but we beat our chests, because our chests are as good as a drum as any animal skin could ever be. That is the warrior's call. Ago, ago, ago. Are we all not children of one womb, from different corners summoned to the center? Your seat was meant for you. It is by no mistake that you are here. My people, sleep is for the strong. And so one man went to sleep, woke the entire clan, and we showed up. It is still midnight, and so I choose to wear black on the day when we celebrate the power of our victory. For darkness is the only backdrop against which light can be seen. They call us the dark continent, but please, we are all the gold the world could ever have. For our gold is not stashed in the earth, it's not stashed in votes, it is stashed in the great minds that we have received from our ancestors. My people, my mission is simple. It is on the ends of old ropes that new ones are woven. And so, when a man is sure of his footing, he dares life to bring on its worst. Blood and toil of our fathers, the sweat of our mothers. Welcome to this place where we offer green, some freshness, and some good breath. And so when we beat our drums, it is not for war this time, my people. When we beat our drums, it is a summoning of the entire clan. Show up and make sure your name is heard. Make sure and ensure that you pass this rhythm down to generations yet to enter the thought of time, that a time in history came where we took an about turn and said that we will be Alpha, call us Omega, call us whichever label. We cannot be suppressed. Can we have another discussion for another day? We are waiting for trained hands of leadership. We choose to call midwives who will place us in fantastic incubators, call it leadership, who will take us to that promised land. This is the promised land. My people, welcome home. And so when a man is guilty of something that is wrong, we name his name and then we beat it on the gongs. When one is guilty of something great, my people, it is only proper that we name and hail. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the center of the world. I came with respect to the Creator, with respect to our kings, to name a man who has rallied all of us and said, come, let us reason together and take our destinies into our own hands. Thank you for the work you have done. Your Excellency, pardon me to come down. I come down because I am simply a child who is learning the steps of our elders. Of what use is a son who cannot interpret his own father's dance? And a child is not held in contempt for calling his father's oath out of 10. Your Excellency, when a king sits in a palanquin and throws his hands about and it remains on the ground, he is simply lying to himself and tickling himself with all the dreams he hopes to have. But when his people go on their knees and they pick him up, when he throws his hands about, beats them on his chest, shows them up to heaven, he is truly master of all that he surveys. But of palanquins and skins, you choose not to have either. Your Excellency, I do not reduce your rank. The world is here, and they are willing to listen to the dream you had that made you summon the clan, and everybody has shown up. If you rise gently, may earth receive you in good stead. Your Excellency, when you take your first steps, let it be history, for it is the most difficult thing, my people, placing one foot in front of the other. That is the only way the old woman will conquer the summits of the mountain. Your Excellency, the world is ready to listen. Tell them something about Sonyo, and then tell them something about St. James they might never have thought about. Tell them the Atlantic is now a playground where we trade fantastic ideas. We are no longer bound by fetters on our hands or even on our minds, and so it's a bead and a watch. My people, it's about time we rub our culture in the face of the world. It says we are one big body that cannot be broken by shackles, by language, by metals. A good matter is short. This one has yet to start from the beginning. Your Excellency, until you rise, I will not leave. And when you rise, I will lead you gently to the place where you will offer word and the world will listen. I wait, sir. Please hold your place. Do not sit until first word is broken.
Thank you. Thank you. Kindly be seated. Thank you. Thank you, Nana Sassi. Let me ask you a question, not as president, but as a student of history. Have you ever wondered why the story of Ghana never included the story of the diaspora? When telling the story of Ghana, many are inclined to begin in 1821 with the formation of the British-ruled Gold Coast colony. But that's inaccurate, because the collective story of our people, the many ethnic groups that populate this country, Ghana, predates the existence of any colony on this African continent. Similarly, when speaking of the transatlantic slave trade, specifically the atrocities that took place on this soil, many are inclined to end our story on the shores of this nation, where our ancestors, and I do mean that word literally because they were our blood and bone that were forced onto ships and transported across the Atlantic. But why do these events that follow cease to be part of Ghana's story also? Between the 16th and 19th centuries, nearly 13 million
African men, women, and children were captured and transported on ships through the Middle Passage. Over 2 million of them died, some because of the harsh conditions, and others because of disease. But there were also those who chose to end it all by jumping overboard. And there were also the ships that sank in storms on the Atlantic, taking with them our forebears who were shackled and chained limb to limb, turning the Gulf of Guinea and the waters of the Atlantic beyond it into a graveyard of our ancestors. Ghana contains more slave forts and castles than any other nation on the African continent. Indeed, over 70 of them, with many still intact, but there are others that lie in ruins today. People who were captured in other areas of the sub-region were marched on foot to one of the forts or castles on Ghana's coast, where they were kept, usually in dungeons, until it was time for them to be loaded as cargo onto ships. Given all this, it would be safe to assume that a significant percentage of the enslaved people, even if they did not originate from the area that is now called Ghana, passed through it on their way to the slave destinations. What followed for each and every one of those individuals is as much a part of Ghana's story as what followed for us who remained firmly rooted here on our soil, but were subjugated and rendered second-class citizens nonetheless through colonization. As Kendrick says, bear with me for a second and let me put you on the game. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to land on our shores. They began the practice of extraction of gold, copper, ivory, chili peppers, and then eventually they moved on to the extraction of human beings. It was the Portuguese who gave the river Volta its name. Volta in Portuguese means to return. They used the river Volta as a kind of boundary. It was the farthest they could travel. Once there, they had to turn around and begin their return. The Portuguese, who were superb shipwrights and navigators, therefore called Volta do Mar, which literally translates as return from the sea, but can also be taken as a turn of the sea. With Volta do Mar, they reversed the course of their ships, using the winds from the currents created by the North Atlantic jar to carry them faster without encountering rough waters. The point at which the river Volta empties into the Gulf of Guinea is part of the Atlantic Ocean. It is called the estuary of the Volta at Adanfoan. For those of you who have not yet had the pleasure of visiting Adan, it is a small coastal town a little over 100 kilometers away from Accra. I've spent some of my most peaceful moments there. I've enjoyed the tranquil river until where it meets the choppy, aggressive waters of the Atlantic Ocean. For years, I did not know the history of these two bodies of water. When I found out, I was stunned. And every time I think about it, I'm still shaken by the cruel irony that even as our people who were enslaved were being forced to walk through the door of no return, their captors had already ensured their own safe return and even memorialized their method of achieving it by lending its name to a river. The Ghanaian American author Ya Jesse wrote in her novel, Homegoing, "We believe the one who has power. He's the one who gets to write the story. So when you study history, you must ask yourself, whose story am I missing? Whose voice was suppressed? So that this voice can come forth. Once you have figured that out, you must find that story too as part of the narrative. By finding and owning the stories of our past, the ones that have been suppressed, we're able to truly know ourselves. And with that knowledge of self comes the power to write ourselves truthfully, respectfully, into not only our future, but the future of all humanity. And that is why we are gathered here today at this Diaspora Summit, to begin the process of reclamation in earnest, to begin the process of writing our own story and moving full steam ahead. That's right. We're reclaiming everything that was ours. Your Excellency For Esozima Nyasingbe, Chairman of the Council of the Republic of Togo, Your Royal Majesties, our traditional leaders, the Chairman of the Council of State, our senior government officials, members of the Diplomatic Corps, our brothers and sisters from our 17th region, the African Diaspora, I say a very warm welcome to you. Welcome home. This is your home. The reason I believe it is important that we begin to consciously carry the story of the diaspora as part and parcel of Ghana's story is because what divides us ultimately, what denies us the ability to be whole, is that division. And that's precisely why it's the perfect way to conquer. We have to stop drawing those lines of demarcation that say, I end here and you begin there. I look into the audience and I can see myself in so many of your faces. And I'm sure that I'll be able to see my children in the faces of your children. And so how can I turn my back on the fact that we are undeniably, inextricably parts of each other? And yet, we have been divided with artificial borders of colonialism that split ethnic homelands right down the middle, with half of our communities being ruled by one European country and the other half being ruled by another. And with the labeling of our ethnicity in a colony as intellectual and worthy of education, while another ethnicity was said to be inherently martial and thus intellectually inferior. We've been divided by the manufacturing of coups, armed conflicts, anti-poverty programs that somehow never eradicate poverty, by the selective broadcast of stereotypes, a systemic war of images waged against us, images meant to foster fear and engender self-hatred and portrayal of Africans as primitive savages whose low cognitive ability makes them incapable of self-determination, and black people in the Americas as lazy, drug-addled, and criminally inclined. And there too is the institutionalization of colorism. The belief that anything black is negative or inferior, and the proximity to whiteness is more desirable. It is reflected in every aspect of our lives. And I say us because colonization did not leave us unscathed, quite the opposite. In English, everything negative and evil is black. In Spanish, la negra means black woman. Tener la negra means to have bad luck or to be jinxed. A once popular French expression that went out of vogue but has recently been making a comeback is travailler comme un nègre. Travailler comme un nègre, which means to work like a slave. And it's often also translated with the word slave being replaced by a more offensive racial slur. But anything in this life, once stripped of its power, will no longer work. And that is true of slurs, it is true of stories, especially ones that are complete fabrications. Let's take the narrative of those who oppressed us and work it. In fact, let's take their entire modus operandi and flip it and reverse it. And so I urge you, my brothers and sisters, let's be more intentional about our unity than they were about our division. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, our brothers and sisters from the 17th region of Ghana, it will not be a difficult goal to achieve. No matter how we've been divided, we've always tried to find our way back to one another. Africans in the diaspora whose forebears were enslaved have kept us in their rhythms. The music they play, the dances, the cadence of their speech, and even the language. The Gula Geechee people of the United States still count using Fulani words instead of numerals. Yoruba language is spoken in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Brazil, Haiti, and Trinidad and Tobago. Likewise, a Creole offspring of Akan is spoken by the Africans, the Maroons in Jamaica and in Suriname. And Africa remains in our food. American gumbo and Brazilian karuru bear a strong resemblance to Ghanaian okra stew. All three use okra, also known as okra, which is native to the African continent and was transported to the New World on slave ships, as were cowpeas. We call it gobe here in Ghana for those of you. Try and eat gobe before you go back. Another food item that is native to Africa, which would explain why some variations of Hopping John, a dish from the Gula Geechee people, are so reminiscent of the Ghanaian wache. Try to eat wache too before you go. The ways in which Africa has remained at the heart of its diaspora are far-reaching, well beyond food and music. Perhaps the most important way is in the cultural elements that are taught to our children, ensuring the cord that has tethered these diasporan communities to the African continent all these centuries remains unbroken. There are the Kweku Anansi folk tales that so many of us in this room grew up hearing and reading, and that have spread all over the world to places too numerous to mention. Just like the popular children's call and response folk song that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Cheche Kule, Cheche Kofisa, Kofisa Langa, Kakati Langa, Kum Adede, Kum Adede. I didn't hear you go. Cheche Kule, Cheche Kule, Kofisa Langa, Kofisa Langa, Lalati Langa, Kum Adede. Thank you. Ghana's first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, said, and that quote has been shown here, "I'm not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me." Though I have no proof, I suspect that this sentiment was heavily influenced by his time in America, where he completed his undergraduate studies at Lincoln University and his graduate studies at the University of Pennsylvania. He was also a frequent visitor to Harlem, and this was in the late 1930s and 1940s, at a time when most Ghanaian intellectuals were completing their higher education in European universities. During his 8 years in the United States, Nkrumah was able to experience at first hand racism and the Jim Crow laws. Nkrumah was already a believer in Pan-Africanism before he went to the United States. He was a huge fan of Marcus Garvey, whose Black Star Line was an attempt to facilitate movements between North America and Africa, particularly Liberia, where free blacks had been emigrating since the 1820s. The Black Star, which is featured prominently on Ghana's flag, has come to be a defining part of our national identity. It underscored his rallying cry, which was the unity of all African peoples. He wanted the story of the diaspora and the stories of all the other indigenous people who had been colonized on the African continent to be a part of our national story. So much so that at the hour of Ghana's independence, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah famously proclaimed that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. It was a heady and ambitious statement, and the years that followed were equally as heady and ambitious, full of growth, infrastructural development, and the building of alliances between other newly independent African nations. There was a sense of hope. No, it was more than that. It was an intoxicating feeling of endless possibilities. It was a pure, perhaps naive belief that we could attain our own modern-day version of the glory that our forebears like Shaka the Zulu and Mansa Musa had, and that we could build our nation states to be as exemplary as the Mwene Mutepa Empire, Songhai, Mali, and the Ghana empires that had existed before. And then came the coup d'etats, many inspired by the imperial nations. not just in Ghana, but in most of the other nations that had newly gained independence. And then came even more coups d'etats, one after the other, following by the imprisonment and exile of our liberation leaders. We now know as Ghanaians, as author Ama Taidu wrote, that there are powerful forces undermining our progress in Africa. We suffered decades of brain drain that emptied a sizable portion of the continent's population, adding scores of exiles to the diaspora. And our nations themselves were surviving, but barely, on the remittances that those individuals sent home. It will surprise you to know, in 1990, the total number of Africans who had migrated voluntarily to the United States eclipsed the total number who had been brought as enslaved people to leaving an utterly devastated continent. When it comes to reparative justice, we ask what is just. We're at a very pivotal place in our journey. There are those who will have us go backward, not just 1 or 2 steps, as if that would not be bad enough. They want us to go all the way back. They want us to develop some sort of amnesia about the blood that was spilled, the lives that were lost, and the years that were sacrificed in order to fight for our freedom. We're at a place in our journey where we do not have the luxury of forgetting. When government officials can so easily use the words like garbage and filth to describe our kith and kin, when they can refer to our countries as shitholes, when they can indiscriminately strip people who look like us of citizenship that they have earned, we do not have the luxury of forgetting or of either excusing the racist dog whistles or explaining the overtly discriminatory and divisive statements that are made daily to our hearing. This is precisely the time when we must advance and begin the process of reclamation. This is precisely the time when we must speak loudly and clearly, naming what it is we have lost as well as what it is we hope to gain. Her Excellency Mian Amor Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, a great African sister, said in a lecture at the London School of Economics, the conspiracy of silence has diminished the horror of what our people faced. This year at the UN General Assembly, I served notice that Ghana will move a motion next year to recognize the transatlantic slave trade as the greatest crime against humanity. I know this motion will enjoy the utmost support from the entire African continent and the diaspora. Africa has suffered slavery, colonialism, genocide, and apartheid. We demand acknowledgement of these crimes against humanity. We demand the establishment of legal, institutional, and international mechanisms to advance reparative justice. Reparations must include tangible measures such as debt cancellation, monetary compensation, return of stolen artifacts, institutional reform, and transformative economic redress in the global economic system. Beyond the material loss that Africa suffered, are also the emotional cost to assess. According to the Oxford Dictionary, epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms that are caused by the modification of gene expression rather than the alteration of the genetic code itself. And studies have shown that trauma can be passed down transgenerationally through epigenetics. And so imagine then the various traumas that the people of African descent have faced. Traumas that are being passed down from one generation onto the other. Traumas from yesteryears coupled with traumas of today and the injustices that we are currently facing. What impact does that have on our health? What impact does that have on the health of our children? And most importantly, how do we heal from that trauma? Ghanaian British actress, writer Michelle Cole wrote, "We can put fear of the future in front of us to block us, or put it behind us to drive us forward." As you debate all these questions and ideas, bear in mind that the future is upon us and that the future is African. And like I said at the UN, let me say it louder one more time for those in the back. The future is African. We hold in our hands the power to change the circumstances of our past. But we must be more intentional about our unity than those who oppressed us were about our division. And from the looks of this gathering, I can feel it, that we are more united than ever. And with a united Africa and diaspora, there is nothing we cannot achieve. I thank you. I wish you fruitful deliberations, and it's my honor and privilege to declare the Diaspora Summit 2025 duly opened. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could kindly have the first row joining His Excellency for the official photos. My brothers and sisters, if you could lower your volume just a little bit, may I kindly ask our VIPs in the first row to kindly join us up on stage for the official opening ceremony photo, kindly. And as our VIPs join His Excellency the President, we have lunch that will be served immediately after this, outside in the tent. We return to the first formal plenaries at 2:45. At 2:45, kindly, we return to this main hall for our sessions, our panel discussions, while, of course, His Excellency is being surrounded by our celebrated VIPs. Allow me to also acknowledge the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Honorable James Jachi Quayson, who joined us today. Also from the UK Parliament, former UK Trade Envoys to Africa and of Ghanaian descent, Honorable Bel Rabero. Adi, thank you very much for joining us. President Albert Jumfo, Ghana Journalists Association President, thank you. And now, if I can kindly have Your Excellency, the national anthem of the Republic of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen. Ghana Police Band, please wait. Please wait, kindly, please wait. Pause, please wait. Excellency will move to his seat before we give the national anthem. Thank you very much. Our VIPs, if you may kindly stand in readiness to conclude with the national anthem. Ghana Police Band, please wait in readiness. Let's allow our VIPs to be at their seats. Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the Republic of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, with humility, if you can remain in your positions as we escort His Excellency the President, and of course, with is now served, we will reconvene at 2:45 here in the main plenary. At 2:45, our first official sessions will begin here in the main plenary. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we can proceed to lunch. We will reconvene at 2:45 here in the main plenary for our first session. Thank you.